All right, let's do an exercise and really practice what we know about bird anatomy and the wings and see if we can kind of come up with a couple of simple rules or simple processes. So let's bring in a real simple, we're just going to bring in a sphere. In fact, have I saved this? Let me save it. Okay, I just paused the recording and did that. I'm going to go into Lightbox. I'm going to start over with a simple default sphere. Okay, so we've got nothing else in there. I'm going to lighten this thing up a little bit for you. And let's talk about just an open wing. So we're going to look at this from a top view. We're going to go into curved tubes. We're going to pull that out. Delete these subdivision levels. In fact, go lower, delete higher. And all you got to do is just click that again. There we go. Okay. But let's really avoid getting too far ahead of ourselves. So let's go into rotate. Move that up. And let's move it back. Okay, those are a couple of rules that we know are in effect if you're looking at it from a top view. Humerus is going to go backwards. Radius and ulna are going to come forward, and the hand is going to go backwards. Okay, and then the way they collapse is going to be humerus moving back. Okay, the radius and ulna folding in, and then the hand folding in. So that's pretty natural progression. So keep in mind the humerus has to go back, and it has to go back further than you think, because technically speaking, there's actually a tendon that flows between those guys. So, tricky. And it twists, so it's going to go up and down from this perspective, of course, because the wings up, the wings down. That's what they do, right? So, this is real basic setup, and let's just continue. I want to continue with this. Curved tube, I'm going to come out. Whoops. Make sure you drop into something else, or come in and make sure that you accept this, or delete the curve. Okay. Roughly the same length. Okay, curve, delete curve. A little bit less, well, it's actually roughly the same length. I mean, technically speaking. And I'm just checking. Alright. Delete curve. Okay, now, let's see, do it in this direction. Remember, we've got a box. We're seeing a little bit of the top of the box there. Okay, this is a perspective discussion. So the hinge is moving in this direction. And this, you can say, will be moving in the other direction. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's fix this up, though. We need the whole thing to be rotated a little bit. There we go. Maybe a touch more. Okay, that's going to work all right. So we've got that, real basic, but now let's talk about how this thing gets held up. And this is going to be one of the relative mechanisms for getting in and designing anatomy, right? And so, as we've learned, a bird uses a U-shaped basic harness. Okay, it's just a harness that's then holding up the body and kind of acting as a support for all of the guts that sit in there, the lungs that are in there, all of that stuff, and protecting them from falling straight down and being too much of a burden. So again, it's just this harness that's being held up, almost as though it's rope that's holding up a bucket, right? That has all of the bird's internal organs and all of their gizzards. And then what's at the top of that is wings. Yeehaw! Little tiny wings that are attached to that stirrup that keeps everything afloat. Okay, that's one way that you can work with things. You'll see in some animals this idea of fusing from behind the neck. But in that case, if you're fusing from behind the neck, then you're working with a different set of gravity. And so this might be the case when you're working with something that's got several limbs that you're trying to kind of organize coming out of one area. But in this case, wings need to have that bucket that they're holding up. And so how are you going to do that? Okay, let's just come down into something like that. Or that wishbone, right? Pretty cool. Starting to make some sense. The wishbone. Okay, let's go into rotate. Rotate that forward a little bit. Let's invert things. I'm going to delete that curve. Switch to the move brush. Okay, and let's start to shape a few things so we can start to get the neck through that wishbone. Let's put in an opening for the neck. Okay. Something like that. Okay, and suddenly we start to have a rib cage. Pretty cool. Smooth that out a little bit. Let's come in, say 1, and I'm going to select that keel. Boom, boom. And we're going to put that attachment for those massive sternal muscles in there, right? And then that wishbone's a little bit on the thick side, so we want to make sure that we're reinforcing this joint here. Yeah. Okay. Let's delete that curve. And we're starting to build a pretty good suspension system here. And of course, we need an attachment for muscles that are going to be coming and pulling this wing backwards, right? Things like the tricep, or muscles that are going to be extending that wing a little bit more. So again, that's going to be the tricep. Just going to attach the scapula and then insert into the ulna. So we need a little muscular attachment right there. And let's use curve snap again, and really small, and there you go. It's as simple as that. Or we could use curved tubes and hope we can get a better line. Yeah, that's going to be okay. And of course, delete the curve, rotate, and rotate that in a little bit. All right, good deal. We've talked through the bony process there. Okay, now I know we went through it with with an anatomy, with the bird skeleton, but now we're going through it as though we were kind of inventing our own anatomy and putting in very concrete pieces of information. So we need something that's going to help with the extension of the wing. Okay, remember the extension of fingers is happening over here. Okay, so we need something that's going to happen inside of that. So that's helping with the extension of the wings. Okay, and then we need two elements that are helping us stabilize the structure. Okay, stabilize the wing structure. And then we're going to need one massive anchor for the muscles related to flight. And of course, we're going to need a simple extension mechanism. Which is just done through some sort of gear mechanism or some sort of rigged mechanism, i.e. bones. Okay, so what you see in front of you right now is a simple breakdown of what we have designed here. If you can take those and move those to anything else, adding limbs in there or working it, with 3 wings or something else, you just want to be working with these basic elements that are going to give you the functionality that you need. So now what we might do is go in and talk about muscles. So let's see what we do if we're just talking it through from a totally different perspective, and we're talking, instead of the muscular terms, we're talking about actions and function.